My stepmom called me a burden every day when Dad wasn't home. She didn't know he installed cameras after I told him the truth. For 3 years, my stepmom Diane has been playing the perfect wife whenever my dad is around. She cooks his favorite meals, laughs at his jokes, and treats me like I'm her own son. But the second his car leaves the driveway, she transforms into something cruel. The insults start before the engine noise fades. I'm a waste of space. I'm the reason she can't have nice things. I'm a parasite feeding off her husband's money. When I finally told my dad what was happening, he looked devastated. Not because he didn't believe me, but because he did. He'd noticed little things over the years that never added up. So instead of confronting her directly, he came up with a plan. He installed cameras throughout the house and told me to act completely normal. He said he needed to see her true face for himself before he could do anything. That was 2 weeks ago. This morning, my dad announced he had an emergency work trip and would be gone for 3 days. Diane put on her Oscar-worthy performance, kissing him goodbye and telling him to drive safe. I watched her wave from the porch like a loving wife until his car disappeared around the corner. What she didn't know was that my dad had parked 2 streets over and was sitting in his truck watching a live feed from every camera in the house. He texted me one word, ready. I texted back a thumbs up. My heart was pounding because I knew exactly what was coming, and for the first time in 3 years, someone else was going to witness it too. The mask came off before she even closed the front door. She turned around and looked at me like I was a roach crawling across her kitchen floor. She said, 3 whole days without your father here to protect his precious little burden. Maybe I'll finally get some peace and quiet if you stay in your room like the unwanted guest you are. I just stared at her, keeping my face neutral. She walked past me and deliberately knocked my backpack off the counter, scattering my homework everywhere. When I bent down to pick it up, she laughed and said, "That's where you belong, on the floor like the dog you are." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted copper. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Dad had texted, "Keep going, I need more." She poured herself a glass of wine even though it was barely noon and sat down at the kitchen table like a queen on her throne. Then she started listing every reason my existence had ruined her life. She said she never wanted stepchildren. She said my real mom was smart to abandon me. She said she'd been slowly convincing my dad to send me to boarding school so she could finally live the life she deserved. That one hit different because I'd overheard her mentioning boarding school to my dad last month, and he'd seemed confused about where the idea came from. She admitted she'd been planting seeds for over a year. Then she stood up, walked over to me, and grabbed my face hard with her manicured nails digging into my cheeks. She said, "If you ever tell your father about our little conversations again, I'll make sure he chooses me over you. And trust me, sweetie, men always choose the woman warming their bed over some whiny teenage boy." That's when the front door opened. Diane's hand dropped from my face so fast, you'd think my skin was on fire. My dad stood in the doorway holding his phone, and I could see the camera footage still playing on the screen. His face was completely unreadable, which was somehow scarier than if he'd been screaming. Diane immediately started stammering, trying to explain, saying I'd provoked her, saying it was taken out of context, saying she was just stressed. My dad held up his hand, and she went silent. He said, "I watched you call my son a burden. I watched you tell him his mother abandoned him. I watched you grab his face and threaten him." He looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "I'm so sorry I didn't believe you sooner." Then he turned back to Diane and said, "Get out of my house. My lawyer will contact you tomorrow." Diane tried to argue, but my dad had already called her sister to come pick her up. She left with nothing but her purse and her shame. Last I heard, she's staying in a motel and telling everyone my dad is crazy. But my dad saved every single recording.